When I heard that they were going to make a sequel to Wall Street, I was pessimistic about the idea. I figured, whatever, just another stupid sequel that Hollywood's cranking out these days. Then I heard Michael Douglas was behind the project as well, and I wondered why he would do something like this. Then I figured the Economic Times might actually make for a compelling story. But when it was announced that Oliver Stone was coming back to direct, I was hooked. It always seems more comforting when the original director decides that the sequel's worth doing, and I had complete faith that Stone would give us an interesting film. So did he? Well, let me say that he matched my expectations for the film, but keep in mind I was going in expecting a commercial sequel meant to exploit the first one. And if Stone was going to do it, well, at least he would make it interesting and well made. That's what Martin Scorsese did with his sequel to The Hustler, and Paul Newman actually got an Oscar nomination for reprising his famous role. And while Michael Douglas didn't end up getting Oscar nominated as well, there's no doubt that he still knows how to tap into that persona of Gordon Gekko. The movie opens up with Gordon Gekko released from prison in 2001 after having served 8 years. 7 years after that, he's the author of a tell-all book and is being accepted in some circles again. One of the people fascinated by Gekko's lectures is Jacob Moore, played by Shia LaBeouf. Jacob is a young stock trader working for the elderly Louis Zabel, played by Frank Langella. Zabel's company is running aground in the midst of the 2008 recession, and he needs money to stay afloat. However, a banker named Bretton James, played by Josh Brolin, is instrumental in preventing his rival from recovering, and seeing no other alternative, Zabel jumps in front of a subway train. Meanwhile, the recession hits almost everyone, and a devastated Jacob mourns the loss of his father figure, while becoming engaged to his girlfriend. This girlfriend is Gordon Gekko's daughter, Winnie, and is played by Carey Mulligan. Winnie hates her father for a number of reasons, and she refuses to allow him the chance of reconciliation. This leads to Jacob and Gekko making a deal. Jacob will help smooth things over with Winnie, and Gordon will help Jacob get revenge on Bretton James. As a sequel made for mostly commercial reasons, this is still an interesting film. Oliver Stone hasn't lost the ability to make his movies good-looking or the ability to get good performances out of the cast. We get a number of supporting characters played by Susan Sarandon, John Buffalo Mailer, and the legendary Eli Wallach. There's also about a dozen other cameos thrown out in the film, some of which are very famous faces. But unlike in Any Given Sunday, many of these cameos detract from the film's story, and they just feel like they've been shoehorned in. The biggest example of that would have to be Charlie Sheen. Dear Lord, but that was the scene that I really did not like. It was so obviously Charlie Sheen reprising his role on 2.5 Men rather than reprising the role of Bud Fox. The scene doesn't just destroy any moral lessons that Bud Fox learned, but it's also clumsily handled as an excuse to get the original star into the film. Some people point to both Shia LaBeouf and Carey Mulligan as bringing the film down, but to be honest, I liked their performances. As I've said before, Shia LaBeouf is capable of a good performance, as some of his non-blockbuster movies have shown. For this film, he went all out preparing for the role, and it really comes across. I heard stories of his earning his broker's license for the role and investing money into the stocks in Wall Street. Seeing him discuss these stocks doesn't feel like an amateur reading off his lines. It also benefits that Shia LaBeouf and Carey Mulligan became a couple during production, which I think made their chemistry much more believable. Mulligan is a very talented British actress, and she also has a very heartfelt scene with Michael Douglas, which I personally think is one of the best scenes in the movie. The other characters are well acted for the most part. Josh Brolin and Frank Langella play their characters effortlessly, and Susan Sarandon strikes a chord as Jacob's ambitious but clueless mother trying to make her own fortune in these troubled times. But as much as I hate saying it, Eli Wallach doesn't have much to do in the film, and his improvised whistles were funny at first, but they just got really annoying when you realize that he's putting them into every one of his scenes. The biggest flaw of Wall Street 2 would have to be its ending, and if you don't want spoilers, I suggest you skip ahead in the video right now. I heard Oliver Stone try to edit the ending after showing it at the Cannes Film Festival, but even after that, it still feels tacked on against the flow of the movie. Not because of what Jacob and Gordon do in the film, but more what Winnie ends up deciding at the end. I thought it went against character, and it served only to provide a happy ending that we could all smile over. It's just so different from the end of the first one, where a condemned Bud Fox slowly walks into the courthouse, but with his morals intact. The need for a happy ending at the expense of the rest of the film is what I really dislike the most about Wall Street 2. I didn't mind the melodrama so much because we need characters in a movie to sympathize with. I might not have liked some scenes like the motorbike race, but the original had dumb scenes like that too. The sequel's ultimately a very mixed bag for me, but certainly not a disaster as some people have called it. It was well acted and well filmed, but it misses the characteristic Oliver Stone ferocity that possessed the first one. There's not as much criticism of the system itself, at least not as obviously. It really focuses more on the characters and their own story. And for some reason, I guess that really annoyed people who wanted to see Oliver Stone's take on the 2008 recession and the people behind it. I suppose you could say that Oliver Stone, much like Gordon Gekko in the film, has mellowed out a bit with age. But personally, I think there's a bit more to it than that. Ever since Alexander's Reception, Stone seems to have played it much safer than he used to. Maybe he's just tired of arousing so much controversy and getting death threats because of it, but the Oliver Stone of today just doesn't seem like the filmmaker who gave us Salvador and JFK. But the thing about Stone is, without the controversial topics and the no-holds-barred madness, he's still a competent filmmaker. And that's something that I think gets lost when people start flame wars and debates over how much of his movies are accurate or not. Sure, Wall Street 2 is a commercial sequel with flaws, but it's still a decent film from a celebrated filmmaker. So, after reviewing all of Stone's feature films, I get to take a breather as I wait for Stone's next film. But from what I've heard, this one seems to hark back to his crazier days. And I think a lot of Stone fans have been given new hope that they'll be receiving a top-notch return to form from Oliver Stone. But of course, that's another review.